Here's our full conversation about F9 and more with Vin Diesel. April 2nd, 2020. That's when the 9th installment of the Fast and Furious films was supposed to hit theaters. Over a year later, F9 drives to the silver screen, and the movie star chatted about it with our Brian Truitt.
How you doing?
Good. Have yourself, man.
All right, I'm doing pretty good. It's a Saturday here. We're at the Universal Studio where it all started, and pretty good day.
That's good. So we've had some movies come out in theaters this summer already, but F9 is the big event film everybody's been waiting for over a year to get back to the cinemas. How cool is that for you? And do you also feel that responsibility in a way of being that, the big film?
It's a very good question. Brian, when the movie was postponed, there was a part of me that felt like I was letting down the fans. Of course, it was out of my control. And of course, it was the right thing to do to protect everybody. But nonetheless, they had gone with me through production. They'd always been there, and they were waiting for April 2nd, 2020 to see Fast 9. Jump cut to a year later. And everything you said is what I started to recognize. The responsibility and the significance of a movie that is so designed for people to see together. So after a year of us all watching movies on our couches, and even more sacrilegious, watching them on our phones, we might not have realized how necessary an audience was for our own appreciation of a film. No one talked about that. It's not discussed in film school. Nobody's analyzed the compounded euphoria that you feel when you're a part of an audience that's cheering a moment on screen, or what it feels like to have someone 5 seats down sniffle and cry, or someone 2 rows ahead gasp, or that collective experience. Even sports are divisive by nature. You go to a sports game, you're either rooting for one team or the other. Fast is that type of ride and that type of experience that most people in the audience have invested 20 years of their lives into, that we can all cheer together.
In the past year, how did you navigate the pandemic as a movie fan? I remember the last movie I saw was Bloodshot before I talked to you, and it was in 438 days until I went to a theater again. For you, how did you navigate that?
It was hard. We love the movies, right? We really do love the movies. We all have memories, defining moments in our lives or our childhood. We associate movies with our loved ones. There's that movie that your mother took you to, your dad took you to, your best friend took you to, your first date. These are all significant moments in our lives that we don't realize are associated with a certain theatrical experience in your life. There's significance there. It means something to us. There's so many people, half the world has been inspired by a movie in either one way or another, a career change, or Martin Luther King's final speech, he's citing a movie that he saw and incorporating that into his message. They mean something. That's the time we come together. What makes Fast and Furious unique is that Fast and Furious has always been the movie that, regardless of what country you're watching it from, regardless of your racial background, your gender, you look at that screen and you know that there's a seat for you at that Toretto barbecue. You just know that. And that's something that's powerful. And that's why, speaking to your point, yes, you start to realize, whoa, the theatrical experience is an endangered experience. And I had no idea that Fast 9 would serve as that protector, as that thing to say, hold on, before we trade in all our movie theaters for home theaters or better iPhones or cell phones, let's remember that thing that we got all through our lives from that theatrical experience.
Not only does Dom have to save the world in F9, but also deal with, fatherhood and brotherhood themes, and it's funny. I watched the original again a few days ago, and it's cool that like that conversation between Dom and Brian now kind of takes place in flashbacks. What do you most enjoy about evolving this character this time and really kind of coming to grips with the past and how you will go forward?
Well, first of all, that in itself is kind of remarkable, right? Going back 20 years, if you would have told me on the day that scene, and I remember that scene so well, it was so important. We worked so hard on that scene. In fact, one of the heads of the studio at Universal said to me once, you're making me remember this. He said, Fast and Furious works because of one moment in the franchise. And I said, what is that? And he says, when Dom tells Brian, I live my life a quarter mile at a time. I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Nothing else matters, not the mortgage, not the store, not my team and all their bullshit. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free. He said any actor at that time could have flubbed that. It would have sounded cheesy. But because you meant it, the franchise became what it was. That's from the head of Universal. The fact that we're going back in the 9th chapter, and this is in some ways the closest thing that we've touched on that feels a little origin story because it predates the first film.
Right.
But to do that in the 9th film, to take one moment where Dom is talking about a charger and why he's afraid of it, and he doesn't give you a lot because he's so stoic. That's the irony. The character was designed to be stoic. He's not going to cry on Brian's shoulder. He's going to hold it in, but not only was he holding in the fact that it was the day that he lost his father and the day that he had to suffer the consequences for reacting in a physical way, what you find out in the 9th chapter is it also represents a broken brotherhood. A brotherhood that we assume in life should have never been broken because it's blood. Here is the champion of brotherhood. Here for 2 decades, when we think of brotherhood, if we look in the dictionary of brotherhood, we see a picture of Dom and Brian. Mm-hmm. And yet, if we just go further back in time, we see that Dom has been holding in a broken brotherhood, his little blood brother, and that he's been going through life feeling as though his brother is accountable for the loss of his father. That's deep.
The original movie turns 20 next week. Do you remember, what was the first scene that you and Paul filmed together? Was it the Toretto's market fight scene? And did you realize even that early that you two had the bond?
Actually, Brian, first of all, Such a great question. The first scene we filmed together, I wasn't even filming. It was Dodger Stadium.
Okay.
The first scene of Fast and Furious was him doing test drives in Dodger Stadium. and I remember us feeling like, this is going to be work? This is insane. We're about to have more fun than we've ever had. But then, to your point, it was the bodega that was the first. And I remember because I remembered that it was always such a clever way. Rob Cohen did such a great job in putting Dom Toretto behind that cage and giving him that, beginning to seed him with that stoic character.
Mm-hmm.
But the bond with Brian, the bond between Paul and I, actually happened before we started filming. We were on set. No, we were on the studio lot. And I gotta even go back further. First of all, if you remember, throughout the 90s was characterized largely by a East Coast, West Coast beef.
Mm-hmm.
I was the quintessential New Yorker. He was a quintessential LA boy. It was already fascinating. It was already so unlikely that we would be not only brothers, but bond the way that we did. And I remember there being a table reading a week before we started filming. And from the very beginning, he did this strange thing, which was he made me feel like he only cared about what I thought. That was strange. It was a bizarre feeling. Obviously, I had directed a movie that went to Cannes, and I directed Strays and went to Sundance Dramatic Competition, so I was coming in with a little bit more directorial expertise, right? But there were 50 people in the room, actors, directors, writers, executives, producers, HODs, assistant directors. After every other line he would read out loud, he would stop, he'd look across the room, and in front of everyone say, "Vin, what do you think?" And I'm like, you're going to get me in trouble, bro. You're really going to get me in trouble because I'm not going to lie. And then invariably I would have to say, they could give you a better line. That line's a little goofy. And boy, did he light up. It was just magic for him. It was just something like, yeah, that's my big brother. He's gonna tell you all if you try to give me any goofy lines. If you don't, elevate my character, he's gonna fight for it. And it was the beginning of what our relationship began.
That's awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brian. Thank you, man. Have a good weekend, bro.
You too, man.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today Entertainment to stay up to date on all of the latest celebrity news.